My boss's words sliced through the conference room, sharp and deliberate. "You're a single mom with zero experience. Don't expect a promotion." His smirk lingered, as if he'd just landed a clever jab. Every eye in the room turned to me, waiting for a reaction. I held my report steady, smiled, not out of amusement, but because I knew something he didn't, and walked out, their silence trailing me like a shadow. A week later, the entire office gathered on the main floor for a company announcement. Whispers swirled about a new CEO. Then he walked in, confident, calm, serious. He scanned the room, his gaze locking on me. "I'm here because of her," he said. Suddenly, no one was looking at him. They were all looking at me. My old boss, the one who said I'd never get a promotion, stood speechless. "My name is Sienna Vale. I'm 33 years old, a single mom, and a mid-level data analyst at a mid-sized tech company in Austin. I don't work in a corner office, I don't wear designer heels. I'm not the person they call when big deals are on the line, but I show up every single day and I know what I'm doing. My mornings start in chaos and coffee. I'm usually up before 6, not because I want to be, but because that's the only way I can get ahead of the day before it swallows me whole." My daughter, Mila, is 6 years old, sharp, funny, full of questions, and convinced she's part unicorn. She's the light of my life and the reason I push through exhaustion every day without fail. While she eats breakfast, usually perched on the counter with one sock on and her hair a mess, I'm double-tasking, ironing my shirt with one hand and scanning emails on my phone with the other. My laptop's already open on the dining table, spreadsheets glowing under the kitchen light. It's like living 2 lives at once, one hand in motherhood, the other in corporate survival. My mom, Delilah, lives with us. She moved in after she retired from teaching, just before Mila started kindergarten. She's calm where I'm frantic, steady where I'm worn thin. Every morning she hands me coffee without a word, like she already knows what kind of day it's going to be. Without her, I don't know how we'd manage. Mila adores her. They watch old cartoons together after school and bake things no one asked for, but everyone eats. Work, on the other hand, is a different kind of challenge. I've been at the company for almost 2 years. It's a comfortable enough place on the surface, casual Fridays, snack walls, team-building retreats, but underneath it's old school in all the wrong ways. Leadership is mostly men, and promotions tend to go to the loudest person in the room, not the one doing the most work. I've never been the loudest. I'm efficient. I meet deadlines. I've created systems that have saved us thousands in wasted hours. But I'm rarely acknowledged. I sit in meetings, take notes, present clean data, and watch my work get credited to someone else with a louder voice and a tighter handshake. Trent Halperin is my direct supervisor. He's one of those people who believes charm is the same as leadership. He jokes too much, listens too little, and makes sure everyone knows who's in charge. The first time I presented a process optimization idea, he patted me on the shoulder and said, "Not bad, Vale. Let's save the big ideas for the boys upstairs." I smiled, didn't flinch, but I never forgot it. There's an unspoken rule in the office: don't challenge Trent. He surrounds himself with people who say yes and never ask why. I learned quickly that speaking up only makes you a target, especially when you're someone like me, a single mom with no Ivy League degree, no connections, no golf game. Still, I kept my head down. I didn't complain. I took on the work no one wanted. I organized data chaos into streamlined dashboards. I stayed late and showed up early, not because I wanted a pat on the back, but because I wanted to create something solid, something I could point to and say, I did that. And maybe, just maybe, it would earn a future for Mila that didn't feel like a constant uphill climb. At night, after I've tucked Mila into bed and double-checked that her homework is in her backpack, I sit on the couch with my laptop open, finishing whatever I didn't get to at the office. My mom usually reads in the next room or watches late-night news with the volume low. Sometimes I hear Mila whispering to her stuffed animals in the dark, making up stories. She tells them, "I'm a superhero." I'm not, but I try to be. That was life, routine, exhausting, and ordinary in the kind of way that feels like it'll never change. I had no idea it was about to. I had no idea the moment that would flip everything upside down was already waiting for me. And when it hit, it didn't come quietly. It started with a meeting. Not just any meeting. The quarterly strategy review, the big one, the kind where directors sit in, decisions are made, and eyes are everywhere. I'd been working on my proposal for weeks. It was a detailed plan to streamline our internal analytics, reduce redundancy, save budget, and open up new paths for growth. I ran the numbers twice, built custom dashboards, designed a rollout plan. It was clean, clear, smart. I didn't expect applause, but I expected to be heard. The meeting room was packed. Cold air, stale coffee, too many suits. I waited as others went before me, most of them repeating recycled ideas we'd heard a dozen times. Trent sat at the head of the table, fingers laced over a leather notebook, nodding with bored approval. When it was my turn, I stood, took a breath, and walked to the front. I presented calmly, clearly. I knew my numbers. I'd prepared for every question I thought might come, but halfway through, I saw it. Trent, smirking. He wasn't even looking at the report. He was staring at me like I was wasting his time. I wrapped up with a line about long-term efficiency gains and paused for questions. Silence. Then Trent leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and said it loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're a single mom with zero experience. Don't expect a promotion." Laughter didn't follow, but no one said anything either. No pushback, no correction, just quiet, awkward silence. Someone coughed. A few eyes dropped to their notebooks. I stood there, frozen in place, a stack of printed reports in my hands. I wanted to say something. Anything. But what could I say that wouldn't make it worse? If I defended myself, I'd look defensive. If I got emotional, I'd be labeled dramatic. So I smiled, small, polite, controlled, and I sat back down. I didn't hear the next speaker. My ears were buzzing. I stared at the grain of the conference table, gripping the edge just to feel grounded. I kept replaying his words over and over, not because I believed them, but because I couldn't believe he said them out loud. After the meeting, no one looked at me. They walked past with weak smiles, silent nods, pretending not to notice. One person, the new intern, touched my arm as I packed up my things. Just a gentle pat. No words. And somehow that tiny gesture hit harder than anything else. I went home that night with a tightness in my chest that wouldn't let go. I tried to hide it. Mila was waiting with crayons and a story about her friend's tooth falling out at lunch. I smiled through dinner. I helped her with reading. But inside, I was unraveling. After she went to bed, I sat on the back porch with my mom. I told her what happened, every word. Delilah listened, quiet as always, then finally said, "That man doesn't know what strength looks like. Grace rattles people like him." I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. Instead, I went inside, opened my laptop, and pulled up the proposal I'd presented that morning. I stared at it. Every data point, every footnote. I knew it was solid. I knew it deserved more than what it got. And I knew then that I couldn't just let this go. I wasn't going to fight him directly. That would be what he expected. He'd already boxed me in, already written my story in his head. Overwhelmed single mom, grateful to have a job, never going to make waves. He had no idea who I was. So I rewrote the report. I refined it, strengthened the impact section, restructured the narrative to show not just the numbers, but the vision behind them. Then, I logged into the internal board access portal, a place where high-level submissions could be reviewed confidentially by senior leadership. I uploaded the revised plan under my name. No titles, no plea for recognition, just the work. Clear. Unapologetic. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't expect much. But something inside me shifted that night. I'd stopped playing by their rules. And even if no one saw what I did, even if it led nowhere, I knew I'd stood up for myself in the one way I could, by letting my work speak louder than their silence. What I didn't know was that someone had seen it, and everything was about to change. The Monday after I submitted the proposal felt like any other day. There were no dramatic emails, no surprise meetings, no signs that anything had shifted. I packed Mila's lunch, dropped her off at school, and drove to work with the same playlist humming in the background, the same stretch of I-35, the same coffee lukewarm by 9 a.m. I kept my head down that week. Trent was more smug than usual, which told me he thought the moment had passed. Maybe in his mind, I had finally learned my place. Maybe he assumed I had let it go, like so many others had. But something was different. It wasn't just about the proposal anymore. It was about Mila. About the night I stood in the doorway and watched her sleep, wondering what kind of example I was setting. Was I showing her how to stand up for herself, or how to shrink when someone tried to make her small? The truth is, I didn't feel brave. I felt exhausted. But sometimes strength doesn't look like shouting in a meeting room. Sometimes it's quiet, strategic, a slow, steady refusal to disappear. And so, while everyone else spent the week planning for a product launch, I quietly waited. Midweek, I got a ping from someone on the executive team. Just a simple message. "Thanks for your submission. Impressive work." That was it. No signature, no title, just enough to know it had been read. I didn't tell anyone, not even my mom. I didn't want to get my hopes up. I knew how these things usually went. Corporate attention could vanish as quickly as it appeared. Then came the announcement. Friday morning, company-wide email, all hands meeting at 10 a.m., sharp, mandatory attendance. The subject line said, "Executive Leadership Update." The buzz around the office was immediate. Whispers in the break room, speculation flying between desks. People assumed someone on the board was stepping down, maybe a restructuring. Trent looked visibly excited. He made some half-joke about finally getting the recognition he clearly deserved. I said nothing. At 9:59, the main conference space was full. Everyone from interns to senior managers packed in, murmuring, scrolling their phones, glancing toward the stage at the front of the room. At 10:02, he walked in, tall, sharp suit, calm presence, the kind of person who didn't need to speak loudly to hold a room. His name was Julian Crest. He paused at the center of the stage, scanned the crowd once, and then his eyes landed on me. He smiled, not in a vague corporate way, but like he knew exactly who I was. Then he spoke. "My name is Julian Crest. As of this morning, I've officially stepped in as CEO of this company, and I want to start by telling you why I'm here." He gestured toward the back screen. My proposal, the visual dashboard I had built, appeared behind him. "I received this report 2 weeks ago. No fluff, no ego, just clear, brilliant work. It was submitted anonymously through our internal system. I spent days reviewing it. I tracked the submission, and I flew across the country because I wanted to meet the person behind it." He turned back to the room. "And I'm here because of her." He pointed straight at me. It took me a full second to register what was happening. The entire room turned to look at me, mouths open, eyes wide. Trent's face went blank. His lips parted, but no words came out. Julian walked directly over. He extended his hand. "Sienna Vale," he said, "your proposal showed more vision, discipline, and impact than anything I've seen from this company in years. I came here to build a better future, and I need your help to do it." I stood slowly. I shook his hand. My palms were cold, but my spine was straight. I didn't need to say anything, not then. The moment spoke for itself. The rest of the meeting felt like a blur. I was standing in the middle of the room with every pair of eyes locked on me. My hands were still at my sides, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon, but I kept my expression calm, controlled, the way I'd taught myself to be. Julian didn't step away. He turned slightly, speaking now to the rest of the room. "This is the kind of leadership we need. Insightful, impact-driven, no ego, just excellence." He turned back to me. "I'd like you to lead a cross-functional team to implement your strategy, with a direct report to me." I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out at first. It wasn't nerves. It was something else. A mix of shock, pride, and a strange, rising sense of justice. It was the feeling of every late night, every silent dismissal, every eye roll from Trent finally flipping upside down. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "I'd be honored." People clapped. Not a lot at first, but it grew. real applause. From people who had never looked twice at me in meetings, from managers who had skimmed my reports, even the intern who had quietly patted my arm last week, they were clapping for me. And not because I'd raised my voice, not because I'd demanded attention, but because the truth had finally spoken loud enough. Trent didn't clap. He stood frozen at the back of the room, jaw tight, arms crossed, his face a portrait of denial. When the meeting ended, he made a straight line for the exit. No congratulations, no smile, no smug comment, just silence. I didn't chase after him. I didn't need to. That afternoon, I was called into a private meeting with Julian. He closed the door, sat across from me, and asked one simple question. "Why didn't you bring this idea to someone sooner?" I gave him the truth. Because when people like Trent are in charge, people like me don't get heard. We get boxed in, talked over, quietly dismissed. I stopped trying to be seen. I focused on doing the work, and I hoped one day it would speak for itself. Julian nodded. "Well, it did, and I see you clearly now." He meant it. I could tell he wasn't interested in image or politics. He was here to build something better, and he saw that potential in me. That week, I was given a new title, Director of Strategic Insights, a promotion I hadn't asked for, one I'd earned 100 times over. It came with a raise, a new office, and something more valuable than all of it, validation. When I told my mom, she teared up quietly and said, "I always knew your day would come. You just needed the right person to open the right door." That night, Mila and I danced in the kitchen. I told her that I got a new job, and she squealed, wrapped her little arms around my waist, and said, "I told you you're a superhero." Maybe I am. Maybe not the kind with a cape or a theme song, but the kind that fights battles people don't see, the kind that stays standing when it would be easier to sit, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be powerful. I went to bed that night not thinking about Trent, not even about the company. I thought about Mila, about how she watched me every day, studying the way I carry myself, the way I speak, the way I respond to people who try to make me feel small. And I knew she would never let anyone define her worth because she saw me refuse to let someone define mine. A few weeks later, I passed Trent's old office on my way to a leadership meeting. It was empty, stripped of his ego and energy. The blinds were open, and the door stood ajar, something he never allowed while he was there. Word around the office was that he resigned, but everyone knew what that meant. A quiet exit, a clean slate. That's how companies handle people like him. No fireworks, no apologies. And honestly, I didn't need one. My office now overlooked the skyline, nothing extravagant, but it was filled with natural light, a whiteboard covered in strategy notes, and a little drawing Mila had made taped to the monitor. She had drawn me as a superhero with a laptop instead of a cape and a coffee cup in hand. Most days, I still felt like the same person. I still picked up Mila from school, still packed her lunch, still leaned on my mom, Delilah, to keep our little home steady. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. I no longer second-guessed myself when I walked into a room full of executives. I no longer shrank when my name was called or looked down when someone questioned my qualifications. I had lived through the doubt, the dismissal, the silence, and I'd answered all of it with work that couldn't be ignored. People in the office started coming to me differently now, not just for tasks or questions, but for guidance, for mentorship. Younger women, people from overlooked teams. They told me they'd seen what happened in that meeting, and it gave them hope. One woman from marketing stopped me by the elevator and said, "I didn't know we were allowed to be seen like that here." I looked at her and said, "We are now." And that's the part that stays with me the most. Not the title, not the office, not even the moment when Julian pointed at me in front of everyone. It's the ripple effect, the quiet revolution that happens when just one person refuses to stay invisible. Because here's the truth, being a single mom doesn't make me less capable. It makes me more resilient, more strategic, more grounded in what actually matters. Every decision I make is sharpened by purpose. Every hour I spend at work is time away from my daughter, and that makes it sacred. I don't waste it. I used to think that if I kept my head down and worked hard enough, someone would notice. But now I know it's not about being noticed. It's about knowing your value long before anyone else does and choosing to act like it. And if the people in power don't see it, you find another way. You build your own door. You write your name on the bottom of a report and hit submit. You don't beg for permission to lead. You show what leadership looks like. When Mila asked me recently what I do at work, I told her, I help people see things clearly. She smiled and said, like glasses. I laughed and said, exactly like glasses. But the truth is, I help people see more than data. I help them see what's possible when you stop underestimating the quiet ones, when you make room for voices that have been ignored for too long. This story started with a moment of disrespect, with a sentence designed to shut me down. You're a single mom with zero experience. Don't expect a promotion. And it ended with a different sentence entirely. I'm here because of her. That's what happens when you stop waiting for someone to hand you power and start owning it for yourself. I'm Sienna Vale. I'm a single mom. I've got experience that can't be listed on a resume. And I didn't just get the promotion. I changed the room I was told I didn't belong in. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told you don't belong, this story is for you. And if you're still in that place right now, don't shrink. Don't settle. Let your work speak. Let your voice rise. You never know who's watching, and you never know when your moment will come. If this story hit home, drop a heart in the comments. I'd love to hear your story too, what you've been through, what you've overcome, or what you're still fighting for. And if you believe more people need to hear this, share it. Someone out there needs this reminder. Make sure to hit that like button if you felt this. Subscribe for more real stories about strength, quiet power, and rewriting the rules they tried to set for us. And remember, your worth isn't up for debate.